Welcome to the Mindset Game podcast. I'm Verit Kogan, host of this podcast, and really delighted to introduce you to Bob Mulhern. Bob is a senior managing director for Colliers Arizona and leads a $50 million commercial real estate brokerage operation for over 120 professionals. He is also co-founder of Great Hearts Arizona, a charter school management organization which operates 24 schools and educates over 15,000 students between kindergarten through 12th grade in Greater Phoenix. He currently serves as the president of the Network School Governing Board of Great Hearts, national chairman of the Tepeyac Leadership Initiative, and is a president-elect of the Arizona State University National Alumni Board of Directors. Bob is a past recipient of the Phoenix Business Journal's Arizona Most Admired Leaders recognition, also NAIOP Arizona's Lifetime Achievement Awards, and currently is recognized as an Arizona State University 100 Business Leader. Bob and his wife, Tina, have 9 children and a growing tribe of grandkids. And on a personal note, I met Bob through one of my team members who got to hear him speak at Arizona State University, and he deeply inspired her and really made a big difference in her life. And it is such a treat, Bob, to have you here with us. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Oh, thank you, Fred. I'm really excited to spend this time with you.
Thank you. So there's so many things going on in your life between the beautiful large family and the many things that you do to support others, and of course, your own company. When you get out in the morning, what is your main intention?
So as I head out, I like to always have a purpose, as we all do. And the purpose I love is this idea of helping unleash the greatness in others, because human beings are a great creation. And I just believe that there's a lot of things in this world to distract them from their own greatness. And so my intention is to help them really see first of all, how wonderful they are. And number 2, how they might be able to, again, continue to pursue those things that will really show them to be great people.
Thank you. And I sense that, whether it's those exact words of unleashing, the greatness in others or other words, I imagine that many leaders out there that are listening have some similar purpose, right? Really uplift, empower, inspire, and so on others. And yet we really have many opportunities oftentimes going on, many conflicting priorities. And so I'm curious, what do you think is most important for leaders to really be mindful of as they go through life, to live their highest potential, unleash their own greatness as well as others?
Well, I think for leaders especially, they need to be able to put first things first. They need to really understand in their own life what is most important, and then what is second and third and fourth, so that as they live that, they can really have a strong influence on others, as people are kind of drawn to anyone who seems to have a sense of who they are, that understands their own identity, so to speak, that seems to be striving toward great things and knowing what those great things are. And I think leaders generally have this desire to do that, but they run into this obstacle called opportunities. And I like to remind leaders that one of the biggest issues leaders face is that there's just too many good opportunities. And a lot of times those many opportunities tend to limit us from actually accomplishing any one of them as good as we could, if we would learn to really decide between those which ones we will pursue in our own lives. And again, when we help others, to help them do the same thing.
And you bring up a good point, like, how do we decide? And that's the tough thing, because I find a lot of people get stuck in kind of analysis paralysis, or kind of one foot forward, one step back, because they're doing many different things and they're not quite sure what is the highest and best for them. So how do we know that?
Yeah, and of course, that's a very personal question for each person, right? So, but we do have to know that. I mean, so to your point, Fred, how do we do it? It takes some time, obviously, and a lot of reflection, and then in the end, prudence, making a good decision. But I think generally speaking, we all know there are certain non-negotiables in our lives, right? And so when I talk with people, those could be spiritual, they could be relational, they could be financial, they could be physical, they could be mindsets like a lifetime learner, they could be, I want to be loving or peaceful or energetic or active. And so now here's our problem. Too many good things, right? And so the key is to be able to say, okay, what is it that will be the center of all this, that's going to that is going to provide power and radiate out amongst all my priorities. And I think that the talk you mentioned that your coworker came to, I used the telescope as an example. And I said, what are the great things about a telescope? People say, well, you can, things that are blurry, that are far away, you can see if the telescope's working. That's great. Or you can see things you really can't even see with your own eye. And so I said, well, what happened if our priorities work the same as a telescope? Because what are the weaknesses of a telescope? Well, if you take any two pieces and you move them around, you can't see anything. So what should be a very clear opportunity, all of a sudden it's blurry. And also what happens if a piece just goes missing, well, it doesn't really work. And so as we really think about what is it that every day is going to be important to me, and then begin to, I think the key is to focus on the most fundamental one first, and then you work out from there. Then you can begin to really, again, I think, see opportunities, and some of this blurriness will go away as you pursue them.
That's a really cool metaphor. And what's coming through my mind is, let's say someone decides, okay, the non-negotiable, let's say, is family and health. Let's just say, then how do you expand beyond that? And what I mean by that is, sometimes if, let's say, I focus on work, right, to the neglect of my health or my family, right, those things would suffer. But on the other hand, if I focus on my family or my health to the neglect of my professional progression or contribution to others, right? Again, some things may suffer. So how do we be able to align that? Like, how do we align that?
So we'll start first with, when you start to say family, health, work, maybe faith, maybe community, all these different things. So I think right now what happens is most people, when they start their day, they have this list, and there's pieces of all those, so to speak, I like to say, on the table, right? And so when you're not aligned or not sure which are the most important, you begin to just pick up what's most urgent, right? Not necessarily what's most important, but what's most urgent. So people end up spending all kinds of time on urgent things that aren't necessarily that important. And so I say that, when this is it's very blurry until you actually start to align them. You're like, wow, this isn't really that complicated. So it's because it allows you to embrace things are going to support that vision you have for your own life. And you're also going to be able to say no to things that aren't, because what happens in today's world, the reason we're all so busy is because the world celebrates busy, like that my bio, when you read, people say, wow, this, Bob must be really quite a guy, but it could be that's causing ruin in my life, but because it's a long list, it's a good list, right? And so what I've learned is that the lists are what kind of somehow drive us, and so we have to be really careful of that. So what I say is that, like in my own life, it's my faith, right? And so I know that if I don't spend time in the morning like I did this morning, really with some quiet in my life, that the days just can't get off to the right start, right? And then right behind that, it is not just family, but my wife. Okay, so if my relationship with my wife, and we have these 9 kids, right, and the 9 grandkids and one on the way, if I don't remember that she's ahead of all those things and everything else I'm going to do today, guess what? I'm not going to be happy at the end of the day, because even if I feel like I've accomplished a lot, if I have done something to damage that relationship, well, I have gotten involved in, I've gotten the urgent distracting me from the most important. So then so then you have the kids, and then my own health too. So all those things before work. So I always remind people, work makes the top five. It's not, but any given day, work can take all of our attention, right? And sometimes it needs to. It's in order to support everything. But I think a lot of times if we forget the more important pieces of our life before that, then work can really destroy us in a sense, and prevent us from doing whatever's behind work for me, which is community service or be involved in the community. So I guess that it is whatever that center is, it kind of permeates out. And if what we're doing today either strengthens that, then or weakens it, we'll feel that in our own lives. And so I don't know if that's a good description. I usually hold up, in fact, I brought my little telescope here because I usually hold it up, and I usually, put it on I keep this on my desk, and, then we're kind of able to talk through it. But it really is, you have to see it that way to say, okay, if I have taken, somehow this piece and put it over here, or this piece here, or I drop something because I've just gotten too busy to remember it doesn't work. And so that focus that allows me to accomplish great things, strive toward great things confidently is compromised, and it just keeps me from, again, I think the greatness we're all called to.
Walk us through how you do it, even a little bit more.
Sure.
So here you created or co-founded this incredible school system, all these schools. I mean, that was birthed by an idea, and certainly a lot of time and effort, I imagine, put into that and growing that and maintaining that.
Right.
And you have your 9 children and many other things. So how did you do it?
Well, it's interesting because it's a perfect example. So when the conclusion by my wife and me that we didn't really like the education opportunities or options that we had for our kids, we're in this together, right? And so you start to consider that. At the time, we probably had only 6 or 7 kids. I don't remember how many, right? So a much smaller family than now. But if you don't have alignment of your most important things, you can't even think about taking on something like that. You can't even imagine, how would I do something that is beyond all these kids and work, which is really busy. And so what I found was that when I considered it, I have to consider all the priorities. Is this going to take away from my energy in the morning, right? Because I need that to get going. Is it going to impact my relationship with my wife negatively, or my kids negatively, right? Is it going to overwhelm my responsibilities at work? And the conclusion is that when we started this, that I need to start small, right? We're going to go. It's a lot of work to get the first school open, but that's all I'm going to worry about. I don't care. Not that I don't care. I'm not going to focus on what might happen next, right? And so we get the first school going, which was a lot of work, but it happened to be a mile from my house, right? So made it very easy to get the kids there and back, and it was fantastic. And so, and I'm not an educator, so you have to attract really good people to help you on these things. But that first school had such a compelling offer that it became a second school and a third school. And actually what we talked about in the introduction was just Arizona. There's schools in Texas now that I'm sort of involved in, but I really focus on Arizona. Texas is about half as big as Arizona, and it will be bigger than us one day. And next year we're opening up in Louisiana. And the year after that, there's another state we're focused on. So it just keeps going. But I do think that, but it just started with this first step, and it was to serve this set of priorities, which is to make sure that our kids got a great education. And then, of course, because it's charter school, it's no cost to attend. So that also helps when you have 9 kids, because there's a lot of college to pay for. So you can see how it aligned. But I do think that if I didn't really have that alignment and everything was just kind of sitting, so to speak, disassembled, I knew all these things were important. I think I would have said, I just don't think I can do that. But like a lot of things, including in our businesses, if you help work on great things, it attracts talent, and it actually feeds everything up and down. There are a lot of people that know me more they know Great Hearts more than they know Colliers, because they have the kids there. I was talking to someone yesterday. Oh yeah, my grandkids went to Scottsdale Prep. My daughter's, attends, Chandler Prep, and you're like, wow. And what do you do again? I have no idea what I do. And so it's amazing how over time, just that commitment that my wife and I made together, because she had actually done some homeschooling, just because we just want to make sure that education is so important, and we just needed to find something, because we knew at a certain point we couldn't teach calculus, or the humane letters the way we wanted. And so that kind of spurred from us a desire to help our own kids. And of course, by God's grace, it helps now a lot of kids. But it started small. But I think that for a lot of people, it never would have started because they just are too overwhelmed by the different things coming on in their life.
Thank you. This really is a beautiful example, because, that belief, right, I can do it, in large part is based in alignment of values. Right. Because if I sense consciously or unconsciously that it might violate some of my other values, let's say my relationship with my spouse, my children, my community, my work, right? If this is something outside of work, then I might have resistance to doing that. Yeah. And that's a shame, because everything is possible. The more that we prove to ourselves that we actually can do it, right? We take a few steps and everything is good, and we pivot and we adjust what we need to adjust. So flexibility is a big part of this. I imagine you learned that. Yeah. Right? And letting go of certain things, certain expectations along the way, right? All of that is a beautiful process. And it really does start with the prioritization of what is most important. Why am I doing this? Is that why aligned with my top 5 or 6 values? And if it's not, to consider what might be even more aligned.
Right. And I think, to your point, I tell people all the time, I'm all about progress, not perfection. And even in my priorities, I mean, all of a sudden, I used to say, you have all these aligned, then all of a sudden you have another baby. Okay. And you're like, okay, oh my goodness, now I don't get as much sleep. I can't exercise as much, or I can't, it impacts everything all up and down. But it is so life is full of unexpected or expected things that just do kind of throw some havoc into the process. But if we just keep working on progress, the next step, and recognize the fulfillment that comes from putting first things first, it really allows us a certain freedom that a lot of people don't have. And you mentioned earlier time. I think a lot of people, time, they see it as a scarce resource, and we have to really see time as an abundant resource in our lives. And you say, well, gosh, with all the things going on, how could that be? And so we do have to have this mindset that's why I have to say no to certain things, because I have plenty of time to do things that are important. I don't have plenty of time to do everything that's in front of me. So that's how I really drive my time. And I have a few great time savers that we could talk about at the end. But I do think that we do want to be really smart with our time, but really see it as something that's abundant in our lives if we keep everything in good order.
Yeah. One of the mantras that kind of has served me well over the years is, to strive not to be the best, but rather to give my best, right? Yes, to do my best, because that is within my control. And I think that sometimes when we have, a huge vision, as many leaders do, that can be crippling a little bit, especially with all of the priorities that we have in our own life, so to really just say, let's just, as you said, start with one school, with one thing, right? Do our best with it, really make that the best that it could be, make sure it's aligned with our priorities, so that as it grows, right, that alignment can continue, right? It's easier to maintain that.
And to your point, I mean, it's a perfect example that you have set up. I like to say a rule that, people might say, well, why do you use the word rule? I don't know. It's just an easy word to use. Because I think people lose by their own rules. They try to do it instead of try to do their best, they try to be the best. And it's just, and they set that for themselves, right? Nobody set that on them. And then they lose. I'm like, well, if we're going to set the rules, we might as well win by them, right? We might as well. And I do think that's what happens. And I give an example just from yesterday. We had a Great Hearts meeting, and like I say, I try to stay out of some of the national, but I was in a meeting. It was the foundation meeting, and they talked about how in Louisiana, where we're opening up next year, that the school only had, they'd hoped to just start with 600 students the first year, which is a good, a humble goal. But at this point, they only had 400, registered, and there was a lot of concern about that. And then I kind of let it go on, and I said, guys, I hope we're not losing by our own rule, because if you think about it, Veritas, the first school, okay, that started all of this, they started with 140 kids first year. Okay, so 400 sounds pretty good to me. It's like 3 times more than we started with to start this whole thing. So let's don't lose by our own rule here, that we set this number that that they still might hit or might not hit, but let's don't let the number, to your point, let's just do our best. Because I reminded people, look, with those 140 kids, we just educated them well, and so the next year more people want to come. But it wasn't because we started with 1,000 kids. It was just that we did a really good job with what we had to do. So I love that mindset. In fact, I'm going to make a note of it, because I do think it's something that will make people happier, right? And again, literally, people may say winning or blessings, but I mean, it'll bring more blessings to their life if they have that mindset. And I love it.
Yeah, and I believe that, and I also believe in the energetics of that. And so you even mentioned that when you had that mindset, right, to start this, right, it was a genuine intention, heartfelt intention, right, to give something to your own children and to other children that could be useful for them, to help them, unleash, right, their own greatness.
Right.
And it attracted, the right teachers, right, the right support system to make this grow. And I think that there's something very real in that when we radiate that higher intention, that it's not anchored in fear, right? Like, I need to be the best. I need to, right? When it's really just giving, doing, being our very best in alignment with our values, in alignment with our higher intention.
Right.
And what gets us up in the morning, right? Sure. And then it does radiate this more expansive field around our body, and we do tend to attract others that are in alignment with that same vibration. So it's easier to actually create what we want, and right. to make it bigger, greater than we can even imagine, as right. I sense was in your case, when we're not in I need to compete against myself or against others kind of mindset.
Well, and I like the word attraction, because it not only, if you have a vivid vision for what you want to do, not just an idea or a statement, but I mean, it is so clear. It not only attracts people, but it actually repels the people that you don't want to be involved. And I think it's important that if whatever you're doing isn't also not just attracting, but repelling, the wrong people. And the wrong people just meaning, in our case, this is a great books, curriculum, not a lot of computers in the classroom. And so you want to attract families that really that embrace that, right? But what you don't want to do is attract families that want to come and try to change you into something else. So you actually want to repel in that way. It's not like they're bad people. It's just that help them find what they're looking for. But I always say, if the vision that you have isn't so vivid that it not just attracts people but repels people, then it's not really that clear, because it's good, so it just attracts everybody. But I think if you really want to hone in again and help everybody really accomplish what's best for them, they need to say, "Oh, I'm glad I asked, because that's not really what I think is best for my child," and that we should be grateful for that. So it is. I love the idea of attracting and repelling, and if we're not doing both, I always wonder if we really are clear on what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
Of course, that happens at work a lot too. We've, one time recently, our younger broker said, "What is the hardest part of your job?" And I said, "The hardest part of my job was about 10 years ago. It's not today. 10 years ago, when people were trying to figure out what we were about here, what was our culture. And that culture, because it was so vivid since that time, has attracted certain brokers and support, and then actually repelled some. That now my life's a lot easier, because when you walk in here, people understand what we're about, and so it was worth all the hard work to create a vivid for our culture, vision for our culture.
So let me ask you, if we speak now of a team or company culture, and we started with our own personal values, priorities, those things that are most important to us, what do you see as the connection there?
Well, I think what I always say to people is the connection is I always say, look, I'm not here as a model, right? But I'm here as an example. And I say that, if you will recognize in your own life and in your own business life what is really important, then I think you'll find, like I have, that there's great opportunity. But I always say, but don't think that I'm saying that I'm a model. Then I always kid them. I say, otherwise, everybody better start having more kids, okay? Because you're way behind. And then they get this idea. Oh yeah, he's not trying to say to me, you got to have this big family, or you have to put faith first, or you have to go start a school. But what is it that you are called to? And so at work, I have these two triangles that lay out this vivid vision. And so we have a culture triangle, and on the top of that is that we respect and appreciate each other. And right next to that is that we're going to collaborate, and we're going to work together. And the other is we're going to compete with honor. Okay, so you take those three things, and there's no additional paragraphs to it. Either you get that, either you're attracted to that, or you're repelled from that, right? But then people kind of get excited, and I said, well, if you like that, you'll be happy here, but you might not make any money, okay? Because we're 100% commission. So here's what we have, another one that says this vivid vision on the people that are very successful here, and they're all great things, they're really, and for their clients, they're a source of great information, right? They invest in their business, just basic ideas. But I do want to give people, it's very clear who we're going to be when you walk through the door. And if you do that, there's plenty of models here on how you can be successful. But I do think that they are, I was in a lot of conflict in my own life till I realized it was two different triangles. I tried to have one triangle when I first got here, and you realize, no, there's the vision and the culture, and then there's the kind of success. How do you accelerate your success?
Yeah, that's a really cool example. So let me ask you a question. There is a thought here around, what if the people in our life are not aligned with our vision? So in your case, your spouse was, right? Your team is, right? Was. What if the people in our life are not?
Right. Well, and of course, not everybody's going to be. It's just by human nature. And so what I've said to others is that, for myself, I think a lot of people will recognize that somehow I just believe and committed to what I actually believe more than they are to what they believe and committed to. So this is where this alignment comes in. There's this certain power that comes from really being comfortable on who you are and what you're doing. And so sometimes people ask me to do something, and I'll say, no, I can't do that. And they'll be shocked. They're like, wow, I thought that was an easy request. I said, well, it would be if it didn't conflict with other things. And at first they're taken back by that a little bit, but after a while, they start to see the wisdom in being able to, not only how important a no is, or how important it is not to use your energy on things that aren't important. So one thing I found, since I've served on some boards, is this board forms, a lot of people join it, and then all of a sudden make a meeting, and after 6 months later, they had to resign from the board because something else came up. Well, I always say you have to choose your hard. And I think most of those people knew they shouldn't be on this board in the first place, but they didn't know how to say no. They felt like, oh, I can't say no to Bill or Mary because, instead of saying, you know what, I'd love to do it, I support it 100%, but really, I just can't give the time that this requires. And so I do think the more you do that people will, that doesn't mean they will necessarily agree with you, but they will allow you to kind of keep striving toward greatness in your own life, as opposed to trying to persuade you in another way. I don't know if that answers the question, but that's what I got to ask. It was really great. One time I was talking to a number of young professionals, and I laid out my priorities, and this very perceptive member said, "Hey, Bob, everybody knows what they're supposed to do. Like everybody knows how to stay healthy. Everybody knows, why. Why do you think it works for you?" I just said, "I'm just more committed to each one of them than most people. I mean, it's not like that we don't know how to take care of ourselves, but I'm committed. I recognize that if I don't take care of myself, I'm not going to have, the ability to work backwards, which is the family, the faith, to do those. But I'm also not going to work the other way. I'm not going to have the energy for work and to do community. And so you exercise, you eat well. Where some people, they know that's a priority, they just don't do it. So that's why I say progress, not perfection. I'm still not perfect in that, right? I had some tortilla chips yesterday, right? I love them. I could eat them all day. I could live on them. But I know it's not good for me. One of my kids asked me one time, "Dad, how come you don't like ice cream?" I said, "I love ice cream. I just don't eat it." I'll have one bite because ice cream is a killer for me. Sugar is like a killer for me. So it's not like you have to look at this, regimented person. You can tell people like my son, I love ice cream, but it's just not good for me. So in my mind, I tell myself I'm allergic to it, but I can have one bite. And it's good, and he gets it, and then I give him a whole scoop of ice cream because I don't expect him to not eat ice cream, right? So there is a lot of interaction in this, but I do think if we let people know, again, they appreciate someone who is really trying to do their best to live their priorities.
Yeah, and I'm grateful for this example because we can speak all day about being clear about what's important to us, prioritizing that, and aligning our decisions, right? Making a commitment. And yet at the same time, it's a moment by moment decision because we only have 24 hours in a day and we do need to sleep and we do need to do some other things. And so walk us through, if you don't mind, some more of these time, I don't know if time hacks or time tips for being able to stay committed to those things that are most important to us and be able to really to give enough time to what we need to give time to.
So I'm gonna provide two huge time savers that unfortunately not everybody will use, because if you work for like a law firm or a title company or bank, they might not allow this into your firewall. But there's a program you can buy called SaneBox, SANEBOX, sanebox.com. And it allows you to, every email comes through SaneBox, and then you tell it what to do with that. So instead of having this inbox with, 75 things in it, if you got those saved 75 emails that I got, let's say, even though they were, they'd be applicable to us, I would say that probably 40 or 50 of mine aren't ever going to make it directly into my inbox. One of them is going to go to the news because it was something from the Business Journal. And some of it's going to go into what they call the black hole, which means I've told it, if I get an email from Dick's Sporting Goods, just delete it. And they call it the black hole for kind of excitement, but really it just deletes it because since I have all these kids and we need those Dick's Sporting Good coupons, right? I have to know that they're actually, that I didn't lose my 10%. I tell people I'll go through 75 emails a year so I can save $15 on a baseball glove, right? Which is crazy. So now they just get deleted. And then when I need a baseball glove, I just go and sort my deleted emails by Dick's Sporting Goods, and boom, there it is. I have my coupon. And so right now, because I've been using SaneBox for like 4 years, 5 years, literally more than half of my emails are automatically deleted. And it's because somebody who I didn't know tried to sell me something I don't want. I just pull it over there on my screen, it's gone. And then there's others that you say, well, I don't want that to go away because I might want to look at it. So like in the business journal, automatically goes in the news feed. And what's left when I open up my inbox, like this morning, I had like 5 emails. Which most people wake up and overnight, they've just been bombarded with stuff, right? Now, I probably received last night 50 emails, and some of those weren't automatically deleted. Some of them went into different files that I've said, look, if this has to do with the school, put it over here. And so I would recommend SaneBox and look at it. It's amazing. It tells me that it saves me by not having to go through all these. Every week it tells you how much time you save. And I remember the first week I saved an hour. I'm like, that's unbelievable. That's like 50 hours a year. Well, now it tells me, because of how many it does and deletes and sorts, and it saves me over 10 hours a week. So that's literally 500 hours a year. And I can feel that. I mean, I used to spend weekends clearing stuff, and I just don't have to do it anymore. It's like, and so I would throw that out, because you do need time, and you need to be smart about it. Another one I used, and we might have even used it, Red, was the Calendly, where if somebody calls me and says, hey, I need to get a meeting with you, I just send them a link, and it's a program called Calendly, Calndly, Calendly.com. And it just allows you to share your calendar with others, but with restrictions, right? So you can say, here's all my 30-minute slots, and you can block out times you don't want, you don't want stuff. But I would say that saves me easily an hour a week. So even that's, but you add an hour a week times 50 weeks, 52, but those together are tremendous. I think they both cost under $100 a year.
I think that the applications are brilliant. And I think what's even more brilliant is the concepts of them.
Yeah.
So if we were to take SaneBox and consider it to be sane life, think of that.
Yeah.
Right? All of the opportunities that we have throughout the day, right? Think of those as the emails. Right. Yes. Yeah. To be able to compartmentalize, to be able to say, all right, my top 5 priorities are such and such, right? Let's say in your case, right? Faith is number 1, wife, kids, work, and so on. So if I have an opportunity, right, I can align it. Is it within the top ones? And if so, it goes into those metaphorical boxes. Yeah. And that just makes the decision so much easier, because I think as humans, as leaders, especially these days, there are so many opportunities, and there's oftentimes a fear of missing out, right? Like, ooh, right, the shiny object right there that can take us away from our commitments. And so when we, metaphorically have that sane life program going on in our psyche, in our mind, right, to be able to say, is this in that top thing, or does it need to go into the black box? Does it need to go into something else? And the same concept as Calendly, right? If let's say, somebody wants to meet with us, and yet we have, all our other priorities, and I can meet you on this day at this time, but maybe not to give more than that, or at a time that is best with our spouse or with our kids or with our work team. It's the same concepts, and it's so simple.
Yeah.
Really, when you think about it, the concept is simple. I mean, there are a million apps out there. There are a million books and things out there. I think the key is really the why and the commitment. Mm-hmm. It is to be very clear, as you are, on why those top 5 things are those top 5 things. Because when we are deeply connected to that, it's easier to make those decisions in the moment, to say no, or to say not yet or later. Right. And so, as we kind of move toward completion here, I would love your input, please, for people that are either not clear about their why, or that maybe they are, but it's, they need your help to increase the commitment level to that, the consistency level to that.
Yeah. So because I'll be challenged sometimes. I'm not challenged, but a question. So someone might say, how can you put health behind family? Because if you're not healthy, you can't help your family, right? So it's a good question, but I think it applies to all of them. So I'll say to them, look, if I could be very healthy, but have a poor relationship with my wife, I'd rather have a great relationship with my wife and not be as healthy. So I just know that that's more important. So you have to kind of ask yourself, because health is really important, And I say sometimes, if you're an athlete, really, if you're not healthy, you can't really do anything. I mean, if you were really grown and you compete and you're a runner or a swimmer or whatever, I can see how you might put that ahead of those. And you're not putting it ahead because of any other reason, but that if you're don't have that energy, you really can't love others the way you want. So it's a very personal decision, but it's the same with work. I mean, like I've had all kinds of opportunities, as we all have, to move out of Phoenix to be a regional guy. And every time that opportunity came, and you say, okay, well, that could be more opportunity, it could be more money, but time away when you have lots of kids is not a good thing. So you have to say, as good as that might be, yeah, there might be some sacrifice here, but the answer is no, I'm not interested in that opportunity. But everybody has to say, because at different times that might be an opportunity that really is important for the family, right? And so there's no easy answer to it, but I do think if we can find quiet, and that's what's so important, quiet in this busy, noisy world, that we can think through these and get comfortable. But again, it's if you start with the center one or this first couple, then you might find that some of the others that you thought were in different orders might move around. But I do think there's a core to all of us that we pretty much know deep inside that, yeah, if I don't have that, it could be something to do with friendship. Again, it could be something with health. It could be, faith, family, all great things. Then none of the others are going to work. So that would be my recommendation. You just have to get in the quiet and give your mind and heart time to speak to your soul.
And I align with that 100%. And there are tools to be able to do that, to be able to access that intuition. And one of those is a tool by an organization called HeartMath, which is a research institution that studies the communication between the heart and the brain and the state of coherence, which is a state of optimal performance and health. And it's the optimal state to make decisions out of, because we're most objective. We're not operating out of fear of missing something or not being the best or not being enough or whatever that might be. And so the technique goes like this. We start by first saying, all right, what is the problem or issue that we're having, let's say, right? We might be too many opportunities, right? Good opportunities. It might not be a challenge in the traditional sense of a problem, to be able to clarify what that is, to be able to identify what are the emotions that we feel about that, right? I feel confused, unsure, maybe I'm worried, maybe I'm fearful, maybe I'm excited, maybe I'm, sad or whatever it might be. And then, as you said, to get quiet and connect with our heart, because that intuition comes in from the field around our body through the heart, right? And only then does it go up to the brain. So, to maybe take a few breaths, kind of breathing ease or appreciation in and out of our heart, to just get quiet, take the little elevator down from our head to our heart, so to speak. Right. And then to ask that question, what's most important here? What's most important here? And when we ask that question, right, like what's the best step or what's most important here, then what we're really saying is, connecting with the deeper part of ourselves and saying, all right, out of all of these different priorities and commitments and opportunities, what's most important? And it brings us back to the core, that which is deeply true for us. In your case, right, as you said, right, your faith, your spouse, your children, which was more important than the money in those cases or other things. And when we align with that, we can often get even more abundance, right? Even more money, even more stuff, right, than we can imagine. And it's a great exercise, because when we're asking that question of what's most important to me from a place of fear, let's say looking at our to-do list or being really overwhelmed, we might not be able to access what truly is the most important. Right. We might be blinded by some beliefs that are not true, right? Some conditioned things, that culturally we believe we should want or that are important, but yet might not be truly important to us at a deeper level. So I appreciate that you brought up the concept of kind of getting quiet, allowing that stillness, ideally on a daily basis, to kind of check in again. What's most important here?
And I like when you said sometimes we bring in things that aren't true, because I have actually on this board for the office, I say all progress begins with the truth. if it's not true, you can't really build on it. Then I remind them with no blaming or shaming, including ourselves. The truth is we might have missed an opportunity. We could get on ourselves. We can blame or shame ourselves. That doesn't help. The truth is what it is. And so we should, and you can always build on the truth. So I like that mindset of, as that sometimes all of these emotions are keeping us away from what should be really obvious, which is the truth that we can build on.
Yeah. And that is the way, I believe, to unleash our own greatness, to live our truth,
right?
Our own truth. Right. And of course, to then radiate that love out to others and help them to do the same for themselves.
Right. I agree. Yeah. I agree.
Well, thank you so much, Bob, for this really wonderful, delicious conversation.
Sure.
So much wisdom and really anchored in simple principles, simple, timeless truths, we might say. How can people learn more about you and all the wonderful things that you do in our world?
So a good way to get a hold of me, obviously, is through LinkedIn. It's just Bob Mulhern with Colliers. And but other than that, I don't really have I mainly communicate through people like you've read that asked me to come on something like this or to speak. But that'd be the best way, because people do reach out to me through that. And one of my favorite recently was actually from an ASU student, and said, you allowed me again to really understand my priorities, and also understand that I'm not living them, and that I don't have to be perfect right now, that progress, not perfection. So they reached out to me. I gave them a few more tidbits through my thoughts on LinkedIn, and it worked out really well. So it's probably the best way to get a hold of me.
And how cool that he or she got that at that younger age. And I think at whatever age, whoever is listening or watching us today, they were meant to get that message today and to anchor back into their own truth and to live into that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.